What do you think are the limitations to constitutionalism in Africa? And what are the major limitations to constitutionalism in Africa? I mean, I'm looking at countries, for example, that have constitutions which are not observed, that have clauses that are constantly flouted. What are some of the limitations of constitutionalism now?
It becomes a power of thing of staying in power. Why do they think like that? I don't know. It could be because they have seen that some politicians who left government were also thrown out, thrown away, discarded, all these things like that. But in most cases, it is the will of people that should be a basis for starting. And of course, then you have institutions. Do we have the appropriate institutions to implement our constitutions? Do we have human resources? Of course, financial resources. They are also very important. For example, in the kind of discussion we're having in South Sudan, we're saying you might want to have all sorts of commissions, human rights commission, anti-corruption commission, anti-miscorruption. Will you be able to sustain them? Because the worst thing is to have all this shopping list and not being able to implement. Then people get, disillusioned. Say that, Batu says this, Batu says this. So it's more complex, but I think if people are open and people think within their own context, I think many things can be resolved.
Sorry, I'm just going to say, I just want to, because in the context of Senegal, for instance, Abdoulaye Wade has been running for a third term. He came into power on the basis of a progressive constitution, and then went on to change that clause to give himself the chance to run for another term. So you ask yourself, why do we even have a constitution in the first instance when it can be constantly altered to suit the interests of particular people? So when it comes to a particular state, power determines what comes into the constitution anyway. So what's the referendum? Why should we even be asked when in the end of the day, it's like people can change it anyhow?
Yeah, but what's the thing? Where does the power come from?
No, it doesn't come from us.
No, what I mean is that we also have to believe that people have power. How do you empower people? We've seen in North Africa whether things will change dramatically when things calm down. I don't know. But what we saw is also people can make change.
You spoke about yourself being given demand to go to Iraq and assist them to make a new constitution after Saddam Hussein was overthrown from power. But from the fact that you're coming from New York, and when you went there, there were American troops in Iraq. I just wanted to know, the process, was it not someone influenced by the American, the constitution making process? Because if I'm not mistaken, I'm sure the Americans pulled out of Iraq late last year or early this year, if I'm not mistaken. So I just want to know if they did not influence constitution making process.
The Americans were in firm control of Iran. So if you think they did not influence it, then it's a different thing. There are two things: the content and the process. I think the Americans influences the process in terms of really controlling it. Because you see, what happened was Iraq was supposed to come out with a new constitution within 6 months. They had their first election in 2005, January. And then they were supposed to come up with a constitution in mid-August. So, we're talking about 6-7 months. How do you come up with a constitution that is participatory in a highly violent situation in short time? It was not possible. But the Americans had to deliver, not for the Iraqis, but for their constituencies. Bush had to say that I invaded this country, but also gave them democracy. So it's one of the landmarks, is to say that, constitution, we gave them constitution. So the time was very, very short. What do you do in a very short period of time? And we, coming from the United Nations, the international community, would like to see that this was as participatory as possible. So it was difficult, it was impossible. But the Americans wanted it to happen, so it happened. So on the process, right, they wanted to happen. You know, it was such a scandal to see what happened towards the end, because the Iraqis kept on fighting each other. And we from the United Nations kept on saying, listen, give yourselves more time. But the Americans said, no more time. So the American ambassador towards the end called all political party leaders. And he says, we finished the constitution here in my residence. And that's what happened. They moved the whole process from parliament to the American ambassador's residence. You know, people like me, I protested, but what am I? What can I do? He said, no, it has to be a sovereign process. At least the American embassy residence should not be the place. But it happened, so you have this. But in terms of content, I would not say they stayed away from the content. We had, I think, more influence than the Americans on the content.
On your opinion, should the Constitution be in constant change, or should it be set as it's originally written up?
There are two things. If you have a Constitution that is unchangeable, a dynamic situation, then it can be an irrelevant one. But if you have a Constitution that also changes frequently, it becomes like any other law. It's not the Constitution, or it's not the principle. So, in as much as possible, it should not be subject to constant change. And when you want to make a constitutional amendment, you should go through some kind of vigorous procedures. In many countries, for example, 2/3 is accepted. In other countries, I think in some European countries, I think it was in Holland, I don't remember now, if a sitting parliament proposes a change, for example, in the constitution, and it's accepted, then the parliament has to go out. You know, it can only come into agreeing that we need to change the constitution, to amend the constitution. But others should amend, because then you see there will be the group interest or personal interest. They all are sent out. A new parliament comes to discuss the changes and ratify. This is perhaps a bit extreme, but the thing is that if you have a constitution that constantly changes, then it becomes like any other law that will not really guide, you know, the country's progress.
We've got 3 questions, Paulos.
Considering that you work with African Union and you also help in drafting the documents there, like related to the constitution, so many people dream of the unification of the African continent, and I feel that you are the right people who are doing these things. What is it that hampers you from these things happening? Since we don't even see a document that can give an opportunity to the African people to pronounce themselves, whether they want this or not to happen. What is it that?
You know, we had the OAU, Organization of African Unity, and that was really to look into decolonization processes. And then they said that that is over. Now we have to have the African Union to unite Africa, right? If you look into the different instruments, the charters, you know, the decisions, all sorts of agreements that have been coming up for a number of years, you have all the instruments needed to unite Africa. The question is how we unite Africa, because Africa is not one. And on top of that, you know, we had some African leaders who do not seem to understand the process of getting where we want to go, and been pushing for that. And for example, what we call brother leader, Gaddafi wanted to unite Africa. But Gaddafi's intention of United Africa is that he wants to be the first president of Africa, what he calls United States of Africa. You know, and he was serious about it. You know, one thing about that man was that, you know, he set his mind there, he put money, he put energy, he put everything there, but that was wrong. You see, so instead of having all the instruments necessary, which we have, and then also taking the necessary process, you had all these things coming. In 2011, the summit of 2011, in January, you know, we had this shared values thing. Shared values is a way of bringing Africa within and under shared values. What are the shared values? Democracy, for example, a lot of things. So this is a way of taking steps towards uniting the continent. But it's a long way to go. And it's a struggle too.
Understanding that you worked, you have some experience with land reform issues. I'm concerned. I just want to know: do you think that land reform issues in Africa, like giving people land, is a positive thing, or something that Africa really needs for, or something that is best for the Black Empowerment program?
You know, that land is sensitive everywhere and also complicated. I see, for example, South Sudan. I'll give an example of South Sudan. Juba, the capital. The government decided to relocate the capital somewhere else. And the reason is that Juba is community owned. And the community is making it too expensive for us to build houses. Therefore, we relocate somewhere else. It's going to be a very, very expensive exercise to create a new capital. So what is it that the government, the community could not discuss so that the government gets land that's appropriate for the capital and the community is compensated? So you see that there is a deadlock there, and the government's response is, there we go from here. And of course the community is now very unhappy. So now you're taking the capital away from us. It is because we're not of the same ethnic group. Ethnicism now comes into the it's a very difficult thing. If you look into Ethiopia, for example, the example I gave, land was owned by very, 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 very few people. And they were upset. Then the military government came, you know, revolutionary, Marxist, and everything like that, and he said, all land belongs to me. All land belongs to government. So they took all land. And of course, they left the peasants to, you know, work on their small clothes. No development, no assist, nothing. But the effect was that all the landlords, all the kings and princes and princesses were all taken out. Now we have a new government. The new government says any citizen can take any size of land, but they have to farm it themselves. You have to sit there and farm it. So if you're a good farmer, you need a bigger land, we can do that. Okay? So, and they put a lot of emphasis on developing the land. It's a way of handling it, see? But in the final analysis, people should be able should be allowed to own land. You know, how, in what context, you know, is this. On the other hand, there is also the development aspect of it. Africa is basically a rural area. How do you develop rural areas if you don't have proper land tenure system where it allows development to come? So you have to look into it. And of course you have land and minerals. And you have land and oil now. You have land and water now. What do you do with all these things?